Jacob Hart had always been a man drawn to the wild, the whispering breeze and the scent of pine needles underfoot. At 32, he found solace among the towering trees and soaring peaks of the Eldridge Mountains, part of a range that carved its way through the heart of Arizona. Armed with a sturdy backpack and a well-worn map, he made his way along a narrow trail that wound through the dense forest that cloaked the mountains. Jacob had been preparing for this trip for weeks. An avid hiker and nature blogger, he longed to capture the raw beauty of the landscape and share it with his small but devoted following. He meticulously examined the best trails, stocked up on high-calorie snacks, and ensured his camping gear was in pristine condition. His smartphone, equipped with a high-resolution camera and an audio recorder, was an essential part of his gear. He believed that the stories of nature deserved to be told. On the first day, he made good progress, hiking through sun-dappled glades and shaded groves, pausing occasionally to snap pictures of vibrant wildflowers and curious wildlife. The chirping birds and rustling leaves created a harmonious symphony that eased his mind, anchoring him in the present moment. Around midday, Jacob arrived at a scenic overlook, where he set up camp on a flat rocky outcrop. The expansive valley below was a breathtaking panorama of undulating hills sprinkled with wildflowers, and the rugged silhouettes of distant peaks loomed like ancient sentinels. As he savored a well-deserved lunch of trail mix, he felt a deep sense of contentment. This was the freedom he had yearned for. He spent the rest of the day exploring his surroundings, taking in the sights, sounds, and smells of the vibrant ecosystem around him. In the evening, he cooked a simple yet satisfying meal over a small campfire, its crackling flames casting dancing shadows around him. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a stunning display that felt like a personal gift from nature. As the stars emerged one by one, Jacob lay in his sleeping bag, staring up at the vast expanse of the night sky. Memories of childhood camping trips flooded his mind. His father's laughter, the stories of constellations, the sense of wonder that had first ignited his love for the outdoors. He had always felt at home beneath the stars, but tonight held an unusual weight, an unfamiliar tension that gnawed at him. The following day, Jacob awoke to the crisp morning air, invigorated and eager to continue his exploration. He packed up his camp and set out on a trail that promised stunning vistas of the surrounding peaks. The forest was alive with the sounds of nature, birds calling, squirrels chattering, and the rustle of leaves as gentle breezes swept through. As Jacob trekked deeper into the mountains, he marveled at the towering trees that framed the path. Their bark was rough and weathered, each one a testament to the passage of time. Occasionally, he stopped to take photos, capturing sunbeams filtering through the leaves, or the way the sunlight splashed against the rocky outcrops. By late afternoon, he reached another campsite near a burbling brook. This site was adorned with an abundance of wildflowers that danced in the slight breeze, a vibrant palette of colors that invigorated the spirit. He set up his tent, eager to be surrounded by such beauty, and spent the rest of the day hiking nearby trails, documenting his journey with carefully crafted notes and photographs. As night fell, Jacob built a fire to ward off the evening chill. He cooked a hearty meal, reflecting on the day's adventures while the flames crackled and popped in the background. With dinner finished, he grabbed his phone, hoping to reach out to his followers during his evening ritual. Day 2. Just when. I think it can't get more beautiful. The Eldridge Mountains surprised me. Tonight's camp is magical, he typed, adding a few photos of the flowers and the sunset. After sending the post, he settled back against a fallen log, letting the warmth of the fire envelop him. However, as the night deepened, a sense of unease settled in. The forest had grown quiet, almost too quiet, as if nature itself was holding its breath. An unsettling feeling skittered across Jacob's skin, making the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. Shadows stretched beyond the reach of the firelight, and the sound of rustling leaves sounded like whispers. Determined not to let fear take hold, Jacob retreated to his tent, zipping it shut to keep the night at bay. The gentle sound of the brook outside lulled him into a fitful sleep, yet curious dreams of shadowy figures danced behind his eyelids, taunting him. The third night. By the time the third day arrived, Jacob felt an unshakable sense of anticipation building within him. Perhaps it was the residual effects of the unease from the previous night, or the fact that he was now fully immersed in the isolation of the mountains. Whatever it was, he could sense that something awaited him. He ventured further than before, pushing himself up steep trails that twisted around boulders and led into hidden glades. Exhaustion settled deep in his bones, but the beauty he encountered kept him moving. Glistening dew on a spider's web, the fluttering of butterfly wings, the scent of pine needles crushed beneath his boots. By late afternoon, Jacob decided to return to the campsite near the brook, where he felt he could set up a solid camp for the night. Once there, he prepared his tent, rearranged the fire pit, and set out his gear for the evening. As dusk began to drape its velvet cloak over the landscape, he lit the fire and watched as flames danced and flickered, casting an orange glow against the encroaching darkness. While he cooked his meal, he felt that familiar tension in the air. Again, a weight that pressed heavily on his shoulders. The joy from the hike began to slip away, replaced by an unsettling feeling that clawed at the back of his mind. He tried to shake it off, reminding himself to enjoy the tranquil surroundings. Night fell. Jacob slipped into his sleeping bag, cocooned in warmth. Although surrounded by the soothing sounds of the brook and the crackling fire, he remained restless. He checked his phone, concerned with the time. The late hour weighed on him, and he decided to document his feelings. Activating the voice recorder, he quietly shared his thoughts. It's night 3 in the Eldridge Mountains, and I can't shake this feeling of unease. Not sure if it's the isolation or just my imagination, but I feel watched. Jacob set the phone down on a nearby rock, planning to record more audio if the feeling persisted. Just as he began to settle in, the hum returned, thick and pervasive, dancing through the cool night air. It started as a low thrum, pulsating with an otherworldly quality that sent shivers down his spine. What is that? He whispered to himself, uneasily glancing around the darkened forest. Shadows stretched and twisted, but he couldn't see their source. Driven by curiosity and the need for answers, Jacob reached for his phone again, capturing the sounds that sent his heart racing. The encounter as the evening wore on, Jacob's sense of fear reached a climax. The hum became almost unbearable, resonating within him, a low-frequency echo that seemed to vibrate through the very ground. Compelled by a sudden rush of adrenaline, he exited his tent, phone in hand, determined to uncover the source of the sound. The night felt alive. The trees stood sentinel around him while the darkness pooled like ink. Jacob navigated cautiously, his flashlight beam slicing through the shadows. As he walked, the hum grew louder, shifting into a frequency that both captivated and terrified him. As he rounded a large boulder, the air shifted, and the hum morphed into a shimmering melody. He paused, heart racing as he witnessed a scene that etched itself into his already frazzled mind. Figures began emerging from the woods, silhouettes adorned with shifting lights that pulsed and glimmered in the darkness. They were unlike any beings he had ever seen, almost fluid in form, with elongated limbs and an ethereal glow that changed colors as they moved. A sense of calm washed over him as they approached, despite the initial shock. He couldn't help but remember all the stories he had heard about beings that roamed the night, tales whispered among hikers in campfire circles. "Don't be afraid," one of them seemed to convey, even without words. They swayed fluidly in a way that carried an unearthly grace. The various hues of light that enveloped them created a fantasy right before Jacob's eyes, casting soft reflections of blues, purples, and greens on the forest floor. Entranced, he raised his phone, capturing the moment. "What are you?" Jacob breathed, his voice trembling as he filmed the surreal encounter. The beings drew closer, their forms shimmering like fireflies, and something began to shift within Jacob. The hum resonated in his chest, a symphony that seemed to resonate with his very essence. The beings mimicked his movements, appearing to dance around the campfire he had previously lit. For several minutes he recorded them, capturing the otherworldly beauty of their forms and the haunting melody that surrounded him. The feeling of safety wrapped around him like a blanket, yet deep down he wrestled with fear. He could not fully comprehend what he was witnessing. In an inexplicable moment of clarity, he understood that the beings were not malicious but rather a curiosity of nature, perhaps guardians of this untouched wilderness. He felt the urge to communicate. He extended his hand, hoping for a connection beyond the physical realm. To his astonishment, one being inched closer and reached out, its finger brushing against Jacob's palm. A wave of energy surged through him, an electric connection that lit every nerve ending. It was exhilarating, yet terrifying. At that moment he felt ancient wisdom pouring into him, a glimpse of a truth he could hardly fathom. Then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, the beings began to retreat, gliding back towards the shadows of the trees. "Wait," Jacob called, desperation seeping into his voice. "Come back." But they continued to melt into the dark, their hum echoing softly in the air, fading until only silence remained. The fire crackled feebly, the glow dimming to embers as Jacob sank to the ground. What had just happened? His mind reeled with the weight of the experience. Jacob hardly believed the events of the night. They felt surreal, like a vivid dream that clung to the edges of his consciousness. He replayed the footage on his phone, desperately trying to cling to the remnants of the encounter, but no amount of recording could fully encapsulate the experience. He knew he had witnessed something extraordinary, something inexplicable. His emotions tumbled through a whirlwind of disbelief, legend, and wonder. Yet bubbling beneath it all was a creeping sensation of dread. The hum was gone, but a lingering echo resided within. As dawn broke, painting the sky in oranges and pinks, Jacob packed up quickly, still shaken by what he had experienced. He felt a compulsion to return to civilization, to escape the mountain, solitude that had felt like an embrace but now felt suffocating. The remnants of the night plagued him, and despite the stunning beauty of the rising sun, an overwhelming heaviness weighed upon his heart. He hiked down the trail, taking care to document his journey, snapping photos and recording thoughts, and attempt to piece together what had happened. But the closer he got to the trailhead, the more he found himself feeling an anxious pull within him, as if the forest itself were urging him to stop, to turn back. Upon reaching his car, which sat parked under the shade of towering trees, he breathed a sigh of relief. The world outside the mountains felt disjointed, a stark contrast to the magical yet haunting experience he had just endured. Back in Pine Ridge, Jacob retreated to his small apartment, wanting nothing more than to process and share his story. But his life quickly became a series of sleepless nights and jumbled thoughts. Friends began to notice the change in him, the distant look in his eyes, and the way he would often lose himself in thought. He pulled away from social gatherings, preferring solitude to confront the haunting questions that lingered. Days turned into weeks, but the hum resonated through the crevices of his mind. Even as he returned to his daily routine, the connection to the beings echoed in his heart, like a tether pulling at him from the depths of the Eldridge Mountains. He tried to write about it, but the words failed him, unable to capture the immensity of what had unfolded. One fateful night, as Jacob sat at his desk, the starlight spilled through the window, casting soft shadows across the room. The remnants of his recordings laid before him, and he pressed play once more. The haunting melody filled the air, the pulsing hum wrapping itself around him. Suddenly his phone buzzed, drawing him back to reality. A message from a friend popped up on the screen. "Hey, you okay? We've all missed you at the hikes. Join us this weekend?" Jacob hesitated, his thoughts swirling. He had attempted to move on, but the mountains whispered to him in a way he couldn't ignore. He typed back, "I'm okay. I'll think about it." As the days passed, Jacob grappled with a sense of longing. He yearned to return to the mountains, to seek understanding and closure. The idea festered within him until it became a driving need. Against the warnings of his friends, He decided he would head back to the Eldridge Mountains for a weekend of reflection and exploration. He felt incomplete, as if something vital awaited him, hidden among the trees. With a renewed sense of purpose, he packed his gear and set off. The familiar sights met him as he returned to the winding roads that led to the mountains. Anticipation coursed through his veins, igniting a spark amid the unease that had haunted him. The return to camp upon reaching the trailhead, Jacob parked and took a moment to absorb the beauty around him. The trees stood tall, welcoming him back like an old friend. The chirping of birds and rustle of leaves felt soothing, yet an undercurrent of tension charged the air. Setting up camp near the brook once more, he took care in recreating the warmth of his previous visits. The small fire pit, a circle of stones he had adorned a few weeks prior, felt like a portal into the memories he cherished. He marveled at how the mountains had remained untouched, enshrined in nature's embrace since his last visit. As dusk approached, he snapped pictures, preserving the moment in time before the sun sank low on the horizon. That night, as he settled into his sleeping bag beneath a star-studded sky, the familiar sense of anticipation blossomed within him. The fire crackled softly, casting warm shadows as he reflected on his past encounters. Would he witness the beings again? Would they return? Or had it all been a figment of his imagination? With each passing hour, a sense of inevitability surrounded him, a call from the depths of the night. As the moon hung high, Jacob felt an electric charge pulse in the air, a sensation that both excited and terrified him. Wait, a disturbance. As midnight approached, the previously peaceful night morphed into something else entirely. The hum returned, pulsating through the air, resonating deep within his bones. Jacob's heart raced as he recognized the sound, this time sharper and more insistent. Reluctantly, he emerged from the confines of his tent and stepped into the night. The fire flickered, illuminating the clearing, but shadows crept in around him, thickening. Gripping his phone, he rushed toward the direction of the sound, gravitating toward the source like a moth to a flame. The hum heightened, creating an almost overwhelming crescendo that echoed through the trees. And then he saw them, the beings illuminated beneath the moonlight like luminescent phantoms, dark, swirling shapes with elongated limbs and ethereal glows, dancing among the trees. This time, there were more of them, drawn to the campsite, their forms shifting and intertwining. Jacob felt a mixture of awe and terror coursing through his veins. "I'm here. I've come back," he whispered, unable to tear his gaze away as the beings began to move in a synchrony that felt divine. The melody filled the air, wrapping around him with an embrace that resonated in his spirit. He raised his phone, capturing the mesmerizing display. The beings engaged with the very fabric of the night, weaving a tapestry of sound and light that flooded his senses. He recorded their movements, the strange yet familiar vibrations, desperately seeking to understand the enigma that surrounded them. Suddenly they paused, turning toward him in unison, and for a brief moment, they seemed to be studying him. Jacob felt the weight of their presence settle over him. The air thickened, and warmth enveloped him. He could sense something shifting within himself, the shared connection that ran deeper than words. "Show me," he implored, feeling a desperate need for knowledge. "Help me understand who you are." A pulse of light radiated from the group, flooding the area with indescribable colors. The beings swayed gently, producing a sound that vibrated through his chest, and Jacob felt the energy penetrate him, transcending the limits of language. Visions began to swirl in his mind, images of galaxies, flowing streams of light, ancient worlds, and echoes of existence beyond human comprehension. As the visions inundated him, Jacob felt himself drawn into an overwhelming wave of consciousness, where time ceased to exist. The beings conveyed a message beyond words, one rooted in the very essence of life. "We are echoes of creation, the guardians of this realm, woven into the tapestry of existence. We are the whispers of the night, reminders of the interconnectedness that binds all living things." The enormity of their message enveloped him, sparking an understanding deep within his core. Memories of the trails he had hiked, the stars he had gazed upon, and the lessons nature held filled him with clarity. But amidst the beauty of the moment, a shadow of fear flickered at the edges of his consciousness. Suddenly, the visions turned. Dark images began to emerge, the desecration of the environment, the disconnect of humanity from nature, the encroachment of civilization that threatened the balance. Jacob gasped as awareness poured into him. He felt the weight of history and the impulse to act. "No, we must protect the mountains," he cried, grasping his phone tightly, a tangible link to his memories and the stories he had lived. But as he protested, the beings began to withdraw, their forms shimmering and fading away like dandelion seeds on the wind. Panic surged through him. Without thinking, he lunged forward, desperately reaching out. "Wait, don't leave me," he shouted, but his words were hollow against the encroaching silence. As the last echoes of their being flickered and vanished, the hum faded to stillness. Jacob stood alone, grasping his phone, frantic breaths escaping his lips. Reality crashed down around him like a tide, saturating his surroundings with heavy silence. The disappearance. After the mystical encounter, Jacob felt a strange emptiness settle in his chest. The beings were gone, but the remnants of their message pulsed in his mind. He collapsed beside the dying embers of the campfire, anxiety clenching his heart. The truth weighed upon him, a responsibility he had never anticipated. As dawn broke over the horizon, he grappled with the enormity of what he had experienced. The vibrant colors of day fell flat against the weight of the shadows he now carried. He replayed the recordings from the night before, hoping to glean more from the messages he believed he had received. But when he played the audio, there was nothing but static. The beings, the hum, the messages, they were lost to the ether. Frustration ignited within him, consuming him as he scrolled through the videos. The visual recordings were solid, yet the beauty he had captured felt tragically incomplete. The day stretched on as he collected his belongings, but the weight of anticipation began to settle in once more. He was overwhelmed by the knowledge he now possessed, yet he felt a deeper connection to the Eldridge Mountains than ever before. The forest pulsed with an energy he could almost touch, filling him with both longing and fear. As dusk began to descend once more, he found himself torn between staying another night to seek the being's return or abandoning the mountains entirely. Finally, he made a decision, feeling that leaving the mountains could not set things right. As he lit a small fire, he hoped for their return. Perhaps they would answer his plea, share their wisdom once more. But as the night deepened and shadows stretched across the clearing, Jacob succumbed to exhaustion, the weight of his thoughts pulling him under. The moments blurred together until he drifted into a restless sleep, unaware of the shadows creeping ever closer. The legacy of Shadow's days passed, and when Jacob didn't return to Pine Ridge, concern began to build among his friends and family. Hours turned into days, yet no signs of him emerged. Search parties scoured the mountains, driven by the remnants of his digital presence. The last post on his blog, the unanswered messages, and the recordings left behind. After a week, a faint glimmer of hope shadowed their desperation. A group reported finding his campsite near the brook, items scattered but no sign of Jacob himself. The panic set in, transforming to agonizing sorrow as the days rolled on. The vast expanse of the mountains swallowed their secrets. At the search site, the local authorities discovered Jacob's phone, intact and still operational. As they powered, duty on curiosity swirled around them. What could the missing hiker have captured? Friends gathered, hearts heavy with anticipation, desperately seeking answers amid the chaos. The recordings began to play. As they listened to his whirring voice, they felt the pull of his experience, captivated by the ethereal melodies and shadowy forms. Jacob's presence echoed through each sound, filling the air around them as they grasped for understanding. They felt the weight of his encounter, yet the beings were lost to the night. When the final video played, the last image of Jacob standing at the brink of connection, An unsettling silence settled over the group. Fear mixed with fascination resonated deeply in their hearts. In the weeks and months to come, the legend of Jacob Hart began to take on a life of its own. Rumors ran rampant through the small town. Whispers of strange occurrences within the Eldridge Mountains spread like wildfire. Many claimed to have felt traces of his spirit wandering the trails, while others spoke of the mystical beings he had encountered. Though reports poured in of strange lights hovering among the trees, of eerie melodies beckoning through the night, no solid evidence could be found. Jacob's fate became intertwined with the wilderness he had loved. His disappearance carved a permanent mark in the history of the mountains. Jacob Hart had set out on a journey seeking the beauty of the wild, but he returned changed by the experience, his presence lingering among the shadows of the Eldridge Mountains. His story transformed into a haunting legend, a testament to the enigmatic powers held within nature and the echoes of the beings that beckoned through the nights. In the years that followed, hikers would often share tales of Jacob's encounter while gathered around fires at campsites, their eyes wide with wonder and awe. The Eldridge Mountains remained a sacred space, a realm where shadows whispered secrets and the hum of ancient melody continued to resonate through the trees. Jacob's spirit became entwined with the mountains, guiding others toward a connection with the wilderness he had so deeply cherished. The echoes of dusk lingered long after the sun set, a reminder that the mysteries of nature remain woven into the very fabric of existence.